What's going on, everyone? It's the Fantasy Football Almanac, back at it with another fantasy football video. Today we're going to be discussing the second half of games from Week 5 and each of the lessons learned from those games. But before we get into it, if you guys could, please go down, give this video a like, give this video a comment. I'm answering every single fantasy football related comments, waiver wire, start sits, anything. I would love to help you guys out. And subscribe to the channel, turn that notification bell on so you dominate your league mates and you don't miss another video. With that out of the way, let's hop into our first lesson. Alright, so the first game I want to talk about is the Dolphins versus the Jets, and this game was very shocking. The Jets putting up 40 points, probably the most points they put up in over 2 years. But what we saw was a lot of telling signs about the running backs in both of these situations. For one, Raheem Mostert, 18 carries, 113 yards, and a touchdown. Chase Edmonds had 1 carry the entire game. Myles Gaskin had 4 carries. Raheem Mostert is the guy in this offense. It's the guy they trust. He's pretty much a lead running back at this point, putting up 70% of the snaps on average over the last 2 games, and is averaging about 18, 19 touches a game over the past 2 weeks. So it's clear the Dolphins want to use this guy, especially now that Tua is out and Teddy Bridgewater might miss another week. We are not 100% sure yet at this point, but if that does happen, we will see Raheem Mostert utilized even more, as we've already seen him be utilized. And then on the Jets side, we got Breece Hall, putting up 27 fantasy points, 18 attempts for 100 yards, and another 2 receiving catches for another 100 yards. This guy had 197 total yards from scrimmage. I mean, that is just wild. In Jets offense, that's not really all that great. I don't even know if I could say that anymore because of how well they've been playing. But Breece Hall looks to be the next dominant rookie running back in the NFL. If you have him, congratulations. I don't even know if I would say to sell him because he's going to be getting 16, 17 carries a game. Yes, he might get vultured from Michael Carter because Michael Carter did have 2 touchdowns this game, but we still did see a Breece Hall touchdown. So it is possible they do give Breece Hall at least 50% of the goal line work. We'll see, though, but it's a little too early to tell at this point. But anyways, that's it for the first game. Actually, just one last thing I wanted to mention. Without Tua, I'm a little concerned starting both of these wide receivers. I still think Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle are starts, but I think they're more wide receiver 2 and flex play options, more so than the wide receiver 1s, high-end wide receiver 2s you were drafting them for. So, yeah, I'm a little bit concerned. Once Tua comes back, everything should be good, but Tua's not back yet, unfortunately. We'll see. We don't know yet, but I'm assuming he'll probably miss at least another week. Now moving on, we got the Falcons versus the Bucs. This game was incredibly boring to watch, but my main takeaway from the Falcons side is that without Patterson, this rushing offense is going to be pretty bad. I mean, Algier had 13 carries for 45 yards, not a single target. Huntley had 34 yards. Avery Williams even got a little bit involved, so it's going to be a committee, which is pretty disgusting for fantasy. To have a committee in one of the worst offenses in football, I really just don't want it. We didn't even see Kyle Pitts. Once Kyle Pitts is back, I mean, he's going to be taking a little bit more volume. And then from the Buccaneers side, Leonard Fournette was an absolute beast, a buy low candidate of all buy lows. Definitely deserved a pop-off game for him. None of the wide receivers really did all too well on the Buccaneers side, but that's fine. I mean, when Leonard Fournette has 31 fantasy points, you can't really expect anything else. Moving on, we're talking about the Titans versus the Washington Commanders. My first takeaway from this game is that Derrick Henry is still absolutely Derrick Henry. We're talking about 25-point showings week in and week out, which is exactly what you want to see from a guy you took probably in the top 5. We see Derrick Henry averaging 24 points a game. And again, what more can you ask for from a running back that you took in the top 5? I mean, he's looking like he did last year and kind of disproving that he's too old or injury prone in any type of way. I think Derrick Henry is here to stay, and he's getting utilized in the receiving game at least a little bit now, averaging 4.5 targets a game over the last 3 weeks, which, I mean, is a very pleasant surprise for, I'm sure, all Derrick Henry owners. I owned Derrick Henry last year. He was getting utilized a little bit in the receiving game, but this is lovely for all Derrick Henry owners. And then my takeaway from the Commanders side is that all these wide receivers are going to be taking away volume from each other on any given week, so there's really no way you can know, oh, I'm going to start this person. I'm going to start Terry McLaurin this week. No, actually, I'm going to start De'Ami Brown. No, I'm starting Curtis Samuel. There's just too many heads in this offense to really trust a single one of them on any given week. I would say they're a lot more valuable in DFS formats where one of them can explode. But in regular week-to-week basis, I really can't advise you to start any of them. There's not a single wide receiver I would start in this offense. And then we also saw Brian Robinson get pretty utilized with 9 carries in the offense. Sure, he only ran for 22 yards, but it was his first game back after getting shot. I mean, as terrible as it sounds, you're probably not going to be able to play that well under circumstance like that. I do pray for him, and I hope his recovery turns out well. But I think he will get back on track and eventually get into the groove of things. Hopefully he does. Next, we got the 49ers versus the Panthers, and I'll talk about Matt Rule in a second. First, I'll just quickly bring up the 49ers. Jeff Wilson Jr. is a beast, getting 100 yards pretty much every single game. He's just touchdown dependent. Isn't really as utilized in the receiving game as some would like, but he gets it done. I mean, absolutely no question about it. Then we have the Carolina Panthers on the other side. Matt Rule was, thank God, now not is, was one of the worst head coaches in the entire NFL, if not the worst. I think he was personally the worst. Now he gets fired. I saw a stat, he was 1-25 when Matt Rule allowed 17 plus points. I don't even know how that's possible for a head coach. Now with him gone, we could see the Panthers start to sell some assets, whether that be selling Christian McCaffrey, whether that be selling DJ Moore. And if we see these players start to trickle out, I think especially a guy like DJ Moore, and probably McCaffrey as well, these are two guys that I think could pretty much only go up in their situations because, I mean, let's face it, the Panthers are terrible. DJ Moore can finally get a competent quarterback, even if he ends up in somewhere like New York, like Tennessee. I think pretty much any situation is better than the situation he's in now. And he could go to a really good team. He could go to a contender. We don't know at this point. Possibly the Chargers, possibly the Chiefs. So, I mean, I would personally go out and trade low on DJ Moore at this point because he could be traded. It's a little bit of a weird trade. You're taking a gamble, but I think it's absolutely worth it. Other than that, Baker Mayfield stinks and now is injured. Christian McCaffrey's the only person I'd start from this offense. Let's move on. So now we got the Eagles-Cardinals game. My first takeaway from the Eagles side is that Jalen Hurts is without a doubt a top 3 quarterback in fantasy football. He is second in total points scored right now, only behind Josh Allen, and Josh Allen's having one of the best seasons of all time at the quarterback position. He's ahead of Lamar Jackson, ahead of Kyler Murray, ahead of Pat Mahomes. Jalen Hurts is crazy good, especially with the offense that he's in. I mean, he has A.J. Brown, one of the best old lines. Devontae Smith is great. I am in love. I was drafting him all over. Very, very happy about it. The only problem is on any given week, you don't really know which of these wide receivers is going to pop off. And even Miles Sanders could have himself a game some weeks. I mean, we see A.J. Brown sometimes popping off, and he's pretty consistent. But Devontae Smith could sometimes have 30 points, sometimes have 5. A.J. Brown will have 10 or 25. We don't know. I would say it's a little inconsistent with these wide receivers, but Dallas Goedert has kind of been a rock in this offense, averaging about 6.5, 7 targets a game. You're fine with that, especially at the tight end position where, again, everyone else stinks. Dallas Goedert getting his, for the most part, is great. I mean, what more can you ask for the tight end position? Then on the Cardinals side, Hollywood Brown is a top target. I mean, he's second in receptions out of the entire NFL, which is awesome. In fantasy football, he's a top 5 receiver right now in half-point PPR. Once Hopkins comes back, I am a little concerned with this total volume. I think he's not going to be averaging 12 targets a game. But if he goes down to, let's say, he loses 4 targets, and they take away Rondale Moore's targets, and they take away some of A.J. Green's targets. If Marquise Hollywood-Brown still averages 8 or 9 targets a game, I think these targets are going to be a lot more efficient because he's going to be getting a lot more deep balls because that's the type of player he is. And he hasn't been able to be utilized in the deep game because there's no other threats in this offense. They have to guard him. So I really like Hollywood Brown. I don't really even think he's a sell high candidate. When DeAndre Hopkins comes back, I think Kyler Murray is going to be able to support both of these guys. But the problem is the rest of the team will probably not be supported. Zach Ertz will not be. On any given week, A.J. Green will not be. I imagine Rondale Moore's value takes a dip. But that's it from the Cardinals side. Now let's move on to the Cowboys versus the Rams. And we saw Cooper Rush just look like, I mean, not really a great quarterback, but he wins games. He's 4-0 in his career as a starter, which blows my mind. I mean, it's just absolutely crazy. I wonder how they're going to be with Dak back. I think CeeDee Lamb's going to absolutely explode. But there really isn't any main takeaways from the Cowboys side. I would say the main thing from the Rams side, though, is Allen Robinson's droppable. It pains me to say. I mean, I wasn't drafting too much Allen Robinson, but I took him in my main league because he fell. And now, I mean, it's just painful. I don't think he's even worth the roster spot at this point. Somebody in your league will pick him up. It'll be painful if he pops off, but all signs are pointing to the fact that he's not going to pop off. I think he's absolutely droppable. And there's pretty much nobody I'd want to even own in this offense except for Cooper Kupp. And Darrell Henderson and Cam Akers are splitting targets and touches in a very, very crowded offense with an O-line that's not good. And Cooper Kupp's insane. Matt Stafford's not even really playing that well. Just terrifies me. But anyways, let's move on to our next set of games in the Cowboys versus the Ravens. What we saw was Joe Mixon was a little bit less utilized than in weeks past, but he was way more efficient. 14 carries for 78 yards, more than doubling his average yards per carry. through the first 4 weeks of the season, which is really great to see for all Joe Mixon owners. Holes were finally starting to get opened up. So glad, and that Samaje Perine's the clear backup. We knew this last year, but a lot of people were talking up Chris Evans, saying that he could be the backup. Samaje Perine is 100% the backup in this offense. So if you are a Joe Mixon owner or you want to stash a backup, Samaje Perine's a fine backup to stash. And then from the Ravens side, first of all, Justin Tucker, GOAT of kickers, enough said. But also, J.K. Dobbins was not as heavily utilized in this game. It was because the game script wasn't really all that great. I mean, they weren't, up 20 points early. But at the same time, I'm a little surprised with how little he was utilized. It might be a little bit concerning for Dobbins owners, but I still think Dobbins is a fine low-end RB2 to own. But anyways, let's move on to our last game, the Raiders versus the Chiefs. And we see that Travis Kelce is, without a doubt, one of the most valuable players in all of fantasy football year in and year out, getting 4 touchdowns. And sure, he only had 25 yards, but it doesn't matter when you're getting 4 touchdowns, 30 fantasy points on the nose. In half-point PPR scoring. I mean, oh, that's so beautiful. We already knew that about Travis Kelce, though. Moving on to the wide receivers, yet again, it's painful. Nobody is playing all that well. I mean, 2 receivers with over double-digit points. Mecole had exactly 10. Marcus Valdes-Scantling had 12. Not really guys you're going to be starting on a week-to-week basis. And my takeaway from the Raiders side is that Josh Jacobs, again, is an animal looking like one of the steals of the century in fantasy football. It was looking a little scary with all the people they brought in, but Josh Jacobs is a steal in fantasy football. There's just no doubt about it. But anyways, guys, that is it for my lessons learned from Week 5 of the NFL season for fantasy football. I hope you guys did enjoy. If you guys did, please go down, leave a like, leave a comment. Again, I am answering every single fantasy football related question. So if you guys are curious about anything, don't be afraid. Please hit me up and subscribe to the channel. Turn that notification bell on so you do not miss another video. But that's it from me. As always, guys, have a good day, a good night, and a good life.